All right. Welcome everyone to Rough Cuts. It is April 19th, 2026. I'm Jonathan, Sports Cards and Sunsets, here with my co-host and buddy Nate in Cardboard Veritas. Our third co-host, Matthew, 1956 Tops guy, is still out on a bit of a sabbatical. We think we'll get him back here one of these episodes pretty soon. But Nate and I are really excited tonight to do a round two of our card battle. We have 5 or 6 matchups that we think will be really fun. But first, we thought we'd dive in by Nate giving us a little bit of a recap of a recent show he hit. So Nate, how's it going?
Hey, good man. Great to see you, Jonathan. And yeah, agreed about Matthew. I feel like he's starting to nibble a little. Like we might get him back with us here pretty soon. So that'll be awesome when we do. Yeah, man. I am fresh back from Strongsville and had a phenomenal time there. Obviously, not going to make this into a recap episode. There have been a lot of really good ones of those, which I've been consuming a lot of. So Tony, Southern Collector, did a really good one, and Jeremy Lee on Sports Cards Live, even though he wasn't there, has had some great recap coverage as well. But it was an awesome time, man. It was my first one. I know you have a lot of love for the Buckeye State, and you would have been there if at all possible, but you were busy doing very fun things on a family vacation, Costa Rica, I think, right?
Yep, you got it.
Yeah, nice, man. But yeah, it was awesome, and I really hope you can come next year, and I really hope that I'll be there next year. It's one where my son and I have kind of been rotating around trying to do one big show in addition to the National for the last few years, and I think we might have found our home now. I think it'd be hard after going to Strongsville to not go back. Incredibly different experience from the National, certainly, which, is just massive and overwhelming and sensory overload and all that in a great way. I mean, I love the National. It's like, 5 of the best days every year, but just, so different in that it's, if you take like, I don't know, 10% of the people and 10% of the dealers, maybe 5%, I don't know, but the ones that we really kind of have the most in common with as collectors, and put them in a small venue in Ohio, that's kind of the feel. So it's awesome. You walk around and you see a lot of people all the time and have some great conversations. Table to table, it's just vintage after vintage after vintage. So small, intimate, nice, kind of friendly venue, a lot less activity, a lot less kind of noise, a lot less ground to cover. It very condensed, and tremendous cards in the room, tremendous people in the room, which is always the most important element of a great show. So I didn't have any huge pickups, and I've kind of been sort of shifting more toward having the mindset of going in just open to whatever presents itself to me at a show and not having a defined want list. I picked up a handful, probably 7 or 8 really fun PC cards. I've posted those on Instagram for folks that are interested. Don't need to spend time on that really tonight. Well, the one highlight was a 52 Topps Yogi. We talked in the last episode. You had a great surprise for me, which was that you had gotten my old one, and very quickly from one of our good hobby buddies, Jim J. Rock, I was able to replace that in my collection with a copy that he's had that he knew I coveted and brought to transact to me. So that was really cool. But the main thing is just lots of great times with hobby buddies, and lots of fun cards and pickups by everyone, and enthusiasm and all that. So it was a very, very good few days.
When I saw your photos of it and a few others, I could tell it was a lot smaller than the National. But then when I saw the pictures of the hangouts, it felt like as many of my buddies were still there. So I feel like it was like take away 90% of the National crowd, but everyone that I know is still. It seemed like they were going. So yeah, I'm pumped to go next year. And I should tell you, your old 52 Topps Yogi is right to the side of me on my display shelf, and I'm excited that you got Jim's old copy.
Awesome, man. Yeah, for sure. Yep.
Well, we're seeing a lot of folks pour into the comments already, and everyone's watching the REA auction that's closing tonight. I know you and I both have some bids in on some things and are watching some cards. What's what's going on before we dive into the card battle, Nate, over at REA that you're watching?
Yeah, fascinating auction tonight. Glad we picked a night where there was nothing going on, right? There is so much good stuff and so much wild stuff going on. You and I were just talking, to start kind of a little smaller here. We were just talking before this started. Kind of a deeper cut card that I like a lot is the Diamond Stars Lefty Grove. There's a really nice SGC3 in this auction that just right before we got on here bumped up to 3,000, which I don't know what the previous high is for an SGC3, but I'm guessing it's about 1,000 or so. I mean, it's a nice copy, but I was pretty shocked to see that. I think the one that everyone is really kind of talking about the sort of bidding pandemonium on is the 48 Leaf Jackie in a PSA 4 that the last I saw was at 80,000 or so with BP. That's a card that averages about 20,000. So just, kind of crazy numbers. It's an incredibly nice, beautiful, sharp, colorful copy. But those are a couple that I've seen. There's just, there's tons of great stuff. There are a lot of nice Goudy Ruths. There is a set break of a pretty high grade bond bred Jackie collection. So I think all 13 bond bred cards. So that's been getting a lot of love and people talking about that. There's an unbelievable Clemente rookie in an SGC4 that I've been watching. I had maybe designs on thinking about upgrading mine into that, but it's gone crazy. So I think I'm out on that. There's one card I'm still in on, but I'm going to stay quiet about that one and lessen until I win it. So how about you,
All
man?
right.
What have you been seeing?
Godspeed. I wish you luck in that. I'm watching a lot of things. One card that we talked about this on a prior episode, but it was the most I ever spent on a card was the E92 Wagner. And now every time a nice one comes up, I'm just watching it. I'm just kind of curious, kind of rooting for it, frankly.
Right.
And there's a couple tonight. There's an SGC3 that looks pretty darn strong to me where it is. It's selling for like $72,000 and it's a beautiful copy. Wow. So congrats to whoever takes that one home. I'm watching the Sporting Life, Honest Wagner and Christy Mathewson, with the pastel look. I know that's one. Yeah. The Wagner was one that was maybe on your list. And there's 2 copies of that are just going. I don't know the comps super well, but gosh, they're well above 20K. There were 3 cards that I have bids on that I kind of hoped to maybe go after, and I'm out on all of them. So I can talk about it. But two are 1914 Cracker Jacks. There's the Mordecai Brown. It was a little higher grade than I would want to chase. But the one I really hoped to win was the Tris Speaker. And it's already, it's a PSA 2. I love that card, but it's really strong. And earlier tonight, I actually won a card on eBay. I'll talk about it down the road, but that completed, it's been a 4-year set registry project for me, and it completed it.
Oh, wow.
And so I bought my card for tonight. It's one.
Nice.
This was a card in a grade that in the last 5 years has only come up 4 times. So it was one that I had to go for when it came up. So I'm out. I'm just watching REA, but the price action is pretty wild.
Yeah. No, that's not a bad spot to be in. And did you say you're going to talk about your eBay pickup later on the show or another time?
I'll talk about it on a future show. But if it was my second ever completed PSA set registry, the first for the diehard listeners, you might know, was my Don Mossy set, all in PSA 8 or better.
Nice. That's awesome. And on the Wagner, what you're doing there in terms of rooting for the card that you got recently, I feel like I do that all the time too. I haven't really talked to many people about that, but I would imagine a lot of us do. It's like, I don't know if it's a time frame or if it's until I have another big pickup or whatever it is, but it's like the most recent big pickup that I've had. Like that's kind of the one card that I still kind of care about the price on, because I just want to feel for a little while like I did okay on it. But then once it's been a little while, I stop really caring too much about it.
As time goes on, you get further and further from that timing the market kind of mindset, but you always hope you timed it pretty well when you decided to go. This was one where I just saw it going up and up and up, and I thought, well, I'm gonna miss it if I don't just go. So
right.
All right.
Nice.
That was a good wind up. I feel like let's get into it. I'm excited. we're going to do something a little unusual for a mostly vintage focused podcast. Is we're going to start out with some shiny cards. So folks that are listening on the audio version, well, you just got to check it out on the YouTube, because there are two Michael Jordan refractors on the screen. Nate's is the 1998 Topps Chrome Jordan in a PSA 7, and mine going up against it is the 1998. So both from the same year here. It's the Kobe Jordan East-West refractor, and the colors on these scans just pop right off of the screen. So, Nate, what do you have to say about your card?
Yeah, so I'll start a little more generally, not only from the same year, and I realized this as I was kind of starting to look into these cards for the show. The 90s obviously is not a primary area of knowledge or expertise for either of us, but these two cards could be had out of the same pack. They were both in the 1998 Topps basketball product. So yours is the straight up 98 Topps, refractor that was available out of that. And mine is the Topps Chrome Preview. So what they did was Topps came out first, and then in a late series issuance of 98 Topps, they stuck a few Chrome Preview cards in the Topps packs to kind of generate interest for Topps Chrome that was going to be coming out shortly after that. So that's why this one is particularly rare, because of its preview status. It was only in like one of the late series from 98 Topps. So I know you and I like to bounce around on these episodes in terms of the importance of rarity, but let me start there. So the populations on these, your card total pop, all companies, all grades, is 718. And mine, the Chrome Refractor Preview, is 146. So it's about kind of 1/5 or so of the total pop. Now, yours is a 9 and mine's a 7. So if we look at grade and higher, that's going to compress some, certainly. But what really attracted me to mine was the rarity, certainly. It's a tough card to come by. It's, one of those ones that I had to chase for quite a while before I finally got one. 7 is a low grade, certainly, especially for a 90s card. But that doesn't really bother me. Made it a little more affordable, and it's a centered 7. So, I think it looks quite nice. And then, the other big thing that, that kind of, I think, is a standout on my card is it's a really unusual pose. You have the shot from the rear angle of Jordan going up to dunk, which I don't really recall seeing on any other card. So capturing MJ in that unique pose in a rare card is what kind of made that one a very high on my want list. How about you, man?
I gotta say, it is extraordinarily rare, the Topps Chrome Preview, and I didn't even realize. Thanks for sharing that they came out of the same Topps packs. But the rarity is interesting. I mean, you just don't see it very often. What's the market value for that? What's for yours in a 7 right now? What is it going for?
It's I think probably they're hard to tell because it's really rare, and it's a 7, which like never changes hands. But I'd guess like 7 or 8 or so, something in that range.
Yeah, that's pretty high. It's a cool card. So the East-West Kobe in a PSA 9. This is one a couple of years ago. It's funny, we didn't really know if it was a dip or if we were still just going down from the COVID boom. But I was at one of the Nationals in Chicago, walking around, and I wanted this card. I just thought a 9 was the right grade for it. In a 9, it's a pop. Let's see, I've got it here. It's a pop 229, 118 higher. So there's even twice as many higher grades of my card than there are yours, which is a 7. But I just thought, back then at 9, it seemed plentiful enough. I bought it cash at the National for $2,400. And wow. I normally on these, I don't talk about money that much,
Yeah.
But this is a crazy moment for Jordans. We were talking about it earlier. This thing is almost 4x since then. I can't believe it. I saw there's one on eBay right now that's already above 8,000, but they're selling for like $9,000, which kind of blows me away. I don't know if that means the market thinks my card is better than your card, or maybe in a 9, yours would go for higher. But I'll take mine. I'll advocate for mine getting the win on this round, pretty much just because it's the Jordan Kobe. It's so cool that you got the East with MJ and you've got the West with Kobe. And in fact, I became so smitten with the card after I'd had it and saw how the market went up that I went out and I bought the other 19 cards in the set. So I've got the full East-West refractor set complete, which is really cool. But I just love, there's something special about the time that Jordan was still playing in the league and kind of mentored Kobe before he passed the torch to him. So I think your card's pretty darn cool and very rare, but I think mine is one of those iconic cards where there's just a ton of demand right now in the market for it.
Yeah, two of the guys that have been hottest in the hobby, for sure. And it is neat, the connection between those two as well. I will say I had thought in the past that we've talked quite a bit about how much we all value card backs. And I don't see my back on the screen, and I don't think yours actually even has a back. So, I will say yours might suffer a little bit from being backless.
I did kind of cheat by not including your back, and I included the back of mine.
Well, which is the back? Are we calling Kobe the back? I guess
they
right?
do. They do usually consider the West to be the back because you can see the number really small there. It says EW5 refractor. And so usually they put that, but sometimes PSA actually gets it wrong. I also want to react to something in the comments. Fresh Prince of Sports Cards said, I need the Penny Hardaway East-West. And I just have to comment, of all 20, that was by far the hardest to come by. In fact, and I ended up having to way overpay when it finally did. I was talking to people in Australia who were hunting for it for me. The Penny Hardaway East-West refractor. It's a sleeper, but that card was hard to find. So
wow,
good luck to you, Fresh Prince.
Do you recall who's on the back of that one?
Oh, I should remember, but I don't. I think maybe it's Michael Finley.
Oh yeah, wow, interesting. I wonder if it's rarer or if it just doesn't come up for some reason.
Let's see if I can locate it and confirm if it is in fact. I've got it in a box over here to my left.
And then I wonder, if Kobe is the back, do Kobe collectors like this card, or do they feel like he's kind of getting slighted a little bit? Like, I don't know. It makes me feel a little ambiguous. Like, kind of like the guy, your buddy Thomas James, and you meet a guy and you're like, is he James Thomas? Is he Thomas James? Like, who am I dealing with here? It's got me a little confused.
Hey, you're making some good arguments. It's not Michael Finley. That was one of the last ones I got to. It's Damon Stoudemire's on the back.
Stoudemire, okay.
But I'm gonna say I think Kobe collectors do like this card, but it's they might not like it quite as much as the MJ collectors do. But if you're a Kobe collector, what you probably do is you look for one that was mis-slabbed and has Kobe on the front, because they are out there.
Oh, are they? Oh, nice. Yeah, true.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll give Nate bonus points for arguing the lack of a back on my card. I think because that was creative. Let's see what we agreed would be. Okay, we're sticking with hoops for the second one. And Nate's card was such a heavy hitter in the hobby that we decided this has to be a 2-on-1. I think this is our first 2 against 1. But Nate has what's many argue is the seminal basketball card, the 1948 Bowman George Mikan, and I'll let him say more about that. Paired against it are a couple key rookies from 1961 Fleer, an Oscar Robertson in PSA 7 and a Jerry West in PSA 4, and both are pretty nicely centered, pretty nicely presenting copies. So Nate, tell us about your George Mikan and how did you come to have this beautiful copy as well?
Yeah, so I have had this one for quite a while, probably 4 or 5 years now. I won it in a golden auction. which is kind of unusual for me, actually. I don't tend to, participate in those too often, maybe a little more then, but it's, even then it was a card that I had, wanted quite a bit. When I got back into collecting in 2020, I went pretty heavily into vintage basketball pretty early on. And the importance of this one kind of stood out to me pretty quickly. And, the thing with this card, so, George was kind of the first superstar of the NBA, and 48 Bowman was the first real basketball set. So it's, kind of a nice confluence there. And you tend to get that with the basketball sets where you have a key rookie and then a key set. So, the next key set obviously was 57 Topps with Bill Russell and Cousy and Pettit, and then 61 Fleer with Oscar, Jerry, Wilt, and Elgin Baylor. But this was the one that really started it all. So, that appealed to me, being a vintage guy and, a sports historians. Big George certainly takes some shots on this card because he kind of looks like an accountant trying to dribble inside out, maybe in gym class or something like that. I don't know.
All true.
He does not look the most graceful on the card, but keep in mind, he was a 6'10" big man before we had a lot of all these fancy ball handling drills that Steph and Kyrie are doing pregame now. So at least he was willing to dribble as a big, even all the way back then. How about you?
I'll say this about your card. And I dug in on Mike and I'm like, all right, what's the deal with this guy? I remember seeing some old sports documentaries about him. He was more of a winner than I expected. Once I dug in, I can't recall that. I don't have my research in front of me, but it was like 4 or 5 championships under his name, and a really kind of a stat sheet filler. But interestingly, when he started, a lot of the stats we have today, they didn't even keep in basketball. So that to me was, this guy played so long ago that, and you've heard this argument before, we've all made it in various ways about different sports, but it was almost a different sport. I don't think, it was well before the 3-point line was a thing. You look at him, he's not quite dribbling very well. And I thought, because it's hard for me to attack the card itself. For folks who aren't looking at it, it's about as well centered and bright as an SGC3 could ever be for a card this old. It's a nice looking copy. The Fleers are really nice looking as well. But Oscar Robertson and Jerry West, if you looked up who are the most influential players or, top 20 basketball players of all time, Oscar, I think, still is going to be on the list, and maybe Jerry West as well. I think both of these guys probably, they were playing the sport when it was more of how we play basketball today. Oscar was the original triple-double guy. Jerry, he was also a guy who just filled up the stat sheet, and big part of the history of the game, the logo. So I think all in all, I'm going to argue for my pair more because I think the players are better and more relevant, even though yours is a really cool old vintage basketball card of a guy where, you dive in and learn about him and it's kind of neat, but there aren't a whole lot of George Mikan fans you're going to meet out on the street.
Says the guy who, I think it was last year, got an absolutely gorgeous copy of an 1888 Captain Jack Glasscock Goodwin Champions card. So, that's what we are, man. We're historians. Yeah. We keep these guys alive. We celebrate them. We don't fall for the plumbers and electrician stuff that the modern guys try to talk about. So Big George was the best at his time. He got rules changed. He was the commissioner of the ABA. I think the original commissioner of the ABA, a trailblazer, a rule breaker, a game changer. Straight Race Cards had a good comment here. He said he remembers doing the Mikan drill as a kid. Straight Race Cards is not that old. He's a pretty young guy. So
tell us what the Mikan drill is.
Yeah,
I think I remember that from basketball.
So that's class. Right. Yeah. So this drill survived, and I did it certainly. Survived, and it, it's still going today, but it's where you come up on the left side and make a layup, then you go up on the right side, left side, right. So it's this, kind of consummate layup drill where you're getting really good at making layups with both hands, and you're timed, and you try to make as many as you can in, say, a minute or whatever. So, Big George dominating down low, like has his own drill that, kind of continues on the legacy as well. But, again, we go back with this one. And I think I'll end up on the other side of this argument. It's not really ever what I like to hang my hat on, but the rarity is, it is a factor. There's only about 600 of these that have been graded in total by PSA and SGC, which for a card of this importance, is a fairly small number. And I think if you look at the centered population, it's probably, I don't know, 10 or 20% of that number. So finding a good looking one is pretty challenging. And then the thing for me that kind of, and look, I'm a fan of 61 Fleer, but they're findable, right? Like and also like we have these two guys, but there's also Wilt in the set, right? And Wilt is kind of the guy in the set. So these are beautiful examples, awesome, important cards. But I think the thing that sets the Mikan apart and above these two is I think it's the only sport in card collecting where you can say there's a first great card in the sport and no one can really legitimately argue it. And that's this card in basketball. Football, I don't know what the answer is. I know what the first football card is, that Yale card from the Goodwin Champion set. You've got the Nagurski and 35 Chickle. You've got the Jim Thorpe and 33 split. There's a lot of things. Baseball, who knows what the first great baseball card is? I think there were some really good ones before the Wagner. So there's a lot of debate, but in basketball, you can't really debate it.
I know everybody knows in basketball, the first great cards are the 4 basketball cards in 1933 Gaudy Sport Kings. We all agree. I think Nate at one point in time had all 4 because they're that important. And so fully agreed. And I'll just say, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Nate said it's 1961 Fleer basketball. He's kind of a fan of it. I just want you to know it's his favorite basketball set of all time, and he is slowly trying to complete the whole set. Don't believe the feigned kind of half praise. Like Nate has beautiful examples of the Oscar in the West as well. So,
Your Honor, the counselor is putting words in my mouth right now. Favorite set of all. No, it is, man. I have so much love. I can't say a single bad word about your cards that are up there as much as I try.
If this wasn't a 2-on-1, it wouldn't even be close. I'll take the fact that I got a couple votes in the comments. By the way, the comments I think sided with you on the Jordans. So
is that right? Okay. All right. Cool.
So all right, let's keep going. Let's keep going. All
right.
I'm gonna get nastier.
That's right. I'm trying to keep an eye on REA over here. So when I keep turning away, that's what I'm doing. Just making sure my card doesn't end.
Hey, are there any updates we need to hear about?
Well, Jonah said that Jackie PSA 4 is up to 86K, which is just mind blowing. Like I can't even fathom that. But yeah, I mean, it's still going strong over there. It all depends on what you're looking at. I think this auction is so full, probably because the market is so strong. It's bringing a lot of stuff out. But I think I have about 200 cards on my watch list, which I think is the most I've ever had.
The Wagner, the E90-2 Wagner that I'm just rooting for. It's over 80,000 now. So
is it?
Off she goes. That's that one.
Wow.
It's up there.
And the Bond bred Jackies are getting a ton of love. I think a lot of people were kind of laying back on those. I mean, you just don't see high grade Bond breds come out, much less the whole set. So
totally.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna tell folks listening what we have. This is a mantle versus mantle. On the right, in the right corner, we have a 1957 Topps Mickey Mantle in PSA 7. This is my card. I'm trying to complete the whole set in high grade. It's pretty damn near perfectly centered. Maybe not spot on, but I think it has an eye appeal sticker on the back. It's a common card, but it's an uncommon condition. Let's see what the pop report information is on this one. It's it's funny. It's a pop 606 in a PSA 7 with 339 higher. Total pop on it is like 14,000. In the left corner, is a 1958 All-Star Mickey Mantle that somebody wrote on, who very well may have been Mickey Mantle. So Nate, what do you want to say on behalf of your card?
Who very well may have been. Yes, I can't dispute that. There's not certainty, but right. So my 58 All-Star Mantle, which is in a PSA 5 with an auto 9 grade. This was one I picked up a few years ago, and I had a decision when I got this one. So this card is really significant to me. This was my favorite vintage card as a kid, and like kind of my first significant vintage card that I got. My dad was a Yankee fan and a Mantle collector as a kid. He got all his thrown out like most dads did back then. So, you know, we kind of collected a little bit when I was in my teens. I remember getting, not this exact card, but one of these, having it in my collection all these years. I still have it. It's pretty beat up. And so, you know, when I started collecting again, because of the significance of this one, I wanted to have a copy that I really liked a lot. And I kind of had a decision. And it was, should I go get a high grade copy of this, like maybe a PSA 8 or something like that, which for this card would kind of qualify, set a 7 or an 8, or should I go try to find one that's signed? And at that time, the price on the two was pretty similar. I think the signed copy was, you know, was a little bit more, but not several multiples, you know, maybe 1.5 or 2x more than a high grade. So, you know, I decided to go with the signed copy, especially when this one came up, that also happened to have really nice eye appeal. It's centered, it has nice color. It does also have an eye appeal sticker on the back, a PWCCE sticker, which I think is kind of tough to find on a signed card. So that was kind of the decision for me. I'm really happy I ended up with this one instead of, you know, what my alternative, which would have been a high grade copy. I do share some of your concern and skepticism about, you know, about the authenticity of the signatures, but I decided to roll the dice with this one. I thought the auto looked great. PSA agreed. So that's the one I went with.
I am a big fan of the 58 All-Star too. It was the first Mantle I bought at my first national ever. I think mine's a nicely centered PSA 6. Which nobody wrote on. They just, you know, some kid opened it from a pack and kept it in good condition. So I love the card. By the way, I did confirm we both have the same sticker on the back of our cards. Mine's a PWCCE, and you know, I think all things considered, these are both similar eye appeal cards. I like the whoever wrote on yours did a nice job of kind of doing it diagonally, like lower on the card, so it looks really good.
Whoever wrote on yours.
Maybe is there a little erasing mark about like on yours, or is that just on the scan? I can't tell. Like
right, up kind of up above the T and the L.
Yeah,
in the signature. Yeah, it's a light mark there. I mean, I don't think it's erasure. It doesn't, you know, it's not, you know, an altered card. It's a light spot there. I'm not sure exactly how it got there, but
yeah, it's interesting. So
yeah,
folks know, and I saw even on the Instagram comments, I'm very much being on brand for what I'm saying about autographed cards. This most likely was signed by Mickey Mantle, but that's the thing. You don't know, and in the future, I think it's going to be even harder. I think pretty soon we'll have robots that are forging these things. But now this one, we know that it was certified before the robots existed.
Right.
But there are forgeries out there, and so I try not to collect things where I have to believe something is true. It would ruin my enjoyment of it. But if you believe it, enjoy it.
I'm going with it on this one, and I want to give your card props too, because to find a 50, the pop is surprisingly high, by the way, in a 7, and how many are above it even in the 57 Mick.
Yeah,
but man, I'm gonna say there are not many copies that look better than yours. I don't, in whatever grade you want to choose. I mean, that is just a phenomenon. To have a 7, you know, first of all, is fairly tough, but then one warranting an e-sticker denoting, you know, essentially perfect centering and just phenomenal overall eye appeal. That's a really special card. So I want to acknowledge that. And I like how Jonah characterized the 58 All-Star mantle in the comments, which is the people's mantle. He said his first mantle as well. And I talked to a lot of people that say that, and it's like it has this almost kind of like special place in the hobby. It's like the only early mantle that like kids can get, or the most common one. Certainly. It's the card that Bob Costas famously carried around in his wallet, and I think still does. And I talked to so many people who say, yeah, that was my favorite vintage card as a kid too. So it's got a special place for me, because of that. I think it has a special place for a lot of people. And I think that's what puts it just over the top above your card, unfortunately for you.
I think, I like that take of the people's mantle too. And on the authenticity of the auto, I mean, we have a buddy, for example, who collects Steve Jeltz. And sometimes I'll joke with him that his Jeltz autos are forged, but it's funny because if you're going to be a forger, you're not going to forge a Steve Jeltz. On that same token, if you're really good at forging the Mickey Mantle signature, you probably spend your time putting it on higher value cards or more rare cards than the People's 58 All-Star. So I hope for your sake that that's a real autograph. And boy, it's too bad it didn't get a 10. I guess it must be flawed in some way. But I hope you're able to enjoy it.
Nice. All right.
Let's keep going. That's 3 of them. I think we're gonna get through all 6. So
doing pretty well.
We're gonna do one now that's different than anything we've done before. We can't compare and contrast rarity and pop reports because it's the same card. On the left, in a deeper blue and a redder cap, is Nate's copy of the 1948 or 1949 Leaf Stan Musial rookie, and on the right is my copy of the Stan Musial rookie. It's a lighter blue background, and it's got totally different. The black ink is obviously different than in this print run than Nate's, because most of Musial's hat is black. So it just shows you how different some of the print runs for Leaf were. And they're both pretty nice looking copies. I've kind of redacted the grades. They're both in SGC slabs, and at least to my eye, they look pretty similar in terms of grade.
Yeah. Yeah. And, when I was in Strongsville, I had the opportunity there to chat for a bit with Brian, who wrote the Relief book that has been getting a lot of attention in the hobby over the past year or so. And I have the book. I've only spent a little bit of time with it so far. I have not read it all the way through, but we were talking a little bit about some of these cards that have the color variations, and he was saying, so I think my Musial is one of the later prints. I think what they did was added some more intensive color to some of the later prints, and then removed some of the detail, like in the hat, to try to get the color to pop a little bit more. I think the theory was that they were not doing as well against the Bowman cards that were out, and they were trying to kind of have the cards pop and therefore become a little more popular in some of the later series, and that was at least partially responsible for some of the color variations that we see. I think some of them are errors as well, but so I think yours is one of the earlier prints. Mine's one of the later prints. I can't remember which one is supposedly rarer. But for me, I initially had one that was, of the variety of yours, and ended up kind of downgrading. Mine was a PSA 3, and got the SGC example here, because I personally, and I think it really fundamentally comes down to personal preference. But what I like about my example here is the way that the colors pop, the kind of sort of unique feel of the really vibrant red cap against the blue background. The blue background almost kind of reminds me of like a a Starry Night Van Gogh kind of feel. It's got, you can see kind of little breaks in the blue where it's sort of the pulp of the cardstock is coming through. And on the Leafs, I tend to gravitate toward the pulpier cardstock cards. Some of them have the more vivid colors, some of them don't. But I don't know. There's a texture element to that for me that I feel like is quite attractive. But how about you, man? What is it about yours that you feel like draws you more in aesthetically?
I think what you said about pulpier is true. That's a good word to put it. There is a texture more that comes through in that deep blue. I love just the clean, unbroken, lighter blue. It's a little bit more of a sky blue on my copy. And I like the when they had the dark print on Musial's hat, it just gives it a little bit more dimension. They're cool. I can imagine wanting an example of them both just to have kind of the different versions. But for me, the main thing that drove me to pick mine of all these examples that came year in and year out when I was watching was the sky blue. I like how the fabric on his shirt kind of pops. I think the white with the cardstock is a little bit less pulpier, so it's a little bit brighter. And there's the fabric on his shirt comes out. They're both nice looking copies. It's interesting. One thing that's cool about yours is the bat. Like there's blue on the edge that cuts off the bat, which is kind of interesting.
Right.
One thing I chime in the chat, the folks who are kind of looking at the different examples, like rate the centering. But when Nate and I were talking before, he was like, well, I could knock the centering on yours and maybe there's something I could say to respond. And I'm looking at him and I'm like, I'm just asking, neither one is perfectly centered, but I'm asking myself, which one do I like the centering better on? And I keep going back and forth. So I just wonder what folks in the chat say. What's your take on the centering, Nate?
I think mine is better left, right. That seems fairly clear to me, but let's see if folks disagree. I think it's close top bottom. I think yours is centered a little low, mine's centered a little high. But I think mine's pretty close to 50-50 left, right, and yours is kind of more in the 58-42 range. That's what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I think mine, yours is better left, right centering. I would probably put it 50-50. When I look at them both on centering, the thing that jumps out at me, I'm looking at which one has the biggest kind of fat white edge that's large, that's obviously larger, or in contrast, an edge that's obviously smaller. And to me, of the 8 edges that we're staring at, your bottom edge is the most disproportionate to any other edge. And so like,
yeah, right, that's fair.
And mine doesn't have an edge that's really heavy, although mine is a little bit low and a little bit to the right. So it's just personal preference on centering, I guess.
Right.
Jonah in the comments isn't impressed with either centering. So,
right, but Mookie seemed at least not unimpressed with the centering of either. He said centering is equally inoffensive. So, I think we can take that as at least not a strong dig at either of the cards, which is good. But I think what you said, Jonathan, is where I want to end up too. I kind of, unlike the 33 Gaudy Garrigs, they are not technically different cards and they don't technically have different numbers in the set, and they wouldn't both be needed to complete a set. But I would ultimately like to end up as a collector with one example of each of these variations in my collection. I like this card this much, and I appreciate both copies. I lean a little more toward the darker one. It's looking from the comments like I'm in the heavy minority in that. It looks like your card is winning quite handily here. And I think actually that's pretty consistent. I've talked about this with people before, and I think the general trend is definitely toward your lighter blue, less pulpy copy. But I'm sticking with mine for now, but I'm hoping to have both.
Yeah, I see examples of yours a lot of times at auction, and I get tempted to go for it too, just to add another one, just to stack stands. So they're both pretty nice.
Yeah.
All right, we've got 2 matchups to go. and I like our pace here. Let's see what we're gonna do. All right, the last two are a lot heavier hitters, so we might kind of lean into these.
Real quick REA update. Someone is messing with me. I know everyone's been there on this before, but I thought I had my card won. It was down like under a minute when I checked it. Now someone's bid again. I just bid again. So now I'm like back in the thick of it. I thought I was going to have a pickup to announce, but I got someone trying to outlast me.
Don't you hate the sniping when it's this format? It's like, just put your bid in. You get another 15-minute clock, right? But that's the way it goes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Sorry, man.
A lot of stuff now. I gotta say, for REA, I do like the new format better. You used to have to stay up till like 1 a.m.
Yeah.
With the way they were doing the closing of lots, and it looks like a lot of stuff is starting to close and pretty high prices. Well, I hope you win it. I would love the announcement.
All right.
I'm gonna throw up. I should different turn of phrase. I'm going to present the second to last matchup here. We have, these are some cool pre-war vintage cards, ladies and gentlemen. Every time I say ladies and gentlemen in this hobby, I hope it's true, by the way. But usually gentlemen. A 1915 Cracker Jack, Christy Mathewson, who is, that's Nate's card, because Nate is one of the most devoted Matty collectors you'll come across. And a PSA 1.5. I don't even see a crease on the thing. Who cares about the grade? But it's a great card. Nice, honest corners you'd expect of a 110-year-old artifact. Against it is an E101 Ty Cobb from 1909, with even more rounded, honester corners. So this is a bright red card against a bright yellow card. Mine's also a 1.5. We say this is the vintage collector grade, the 1.5.
Yeah, the 1.5 matchup. I love it. Yep.
Yeah, and it's with the bright. This is a kind of this cartoonish portrait of Ty Cobb leaning on his bat with bright yellow in the background, kind of off-centered right left. This is an old tobacco card that has seen some history through its life. Nate, what can you tell us about the population here?
So it looks like the pops are the total pop, PSA and SGC on the 1915 Matty is 209. And the total pop on the E101 Cobb is 77. Now, the Cobb, like a lot of the caramel cards, appears in some of the other candy and caramel issues from that period. I know it's in the E92 and the E106 as well. Those are different cards, but the same pose. Some people sometimes, think about them somewhat interchangeably. If they're not set collectors and, just kind of want the aesthetic and the pose of the card. So the Cobb pop, when you take, the other examples of that pose into account, might be a little bit higher. Still nowhere near the Matty at 200, probably somewhere near 100 or a little over.
It's amazing. I'm looking at the pop information that I had collected on it and the Matty, and this is a beautiful looking copy. I think yours is a pop 3 and a 1.5 with 15 lower. That's what I wrote down. So most of the population of the 15 Cracker Jack is higher. And we've talked about this a little bit because the 1915 Cracker Jacks, you could get it in kind of a redemption. A lot of people had higher grade copies.
Right.
But it's still, it's a beautiful looking example and still very, very scarce. Versus my copy looks a little bit more like, that's a 1.5. It's you can see some not creasing so much, maybe a little bit across the bottom, but the right edge is a little bit beat up. But both of these have a ton of character. Mine is about 3 times as scarce as yours. And you've got Mathewson versus Cobb. So what do I think is going for mine? I think it's got scarcity going for it. I love the artwork on it. That was one thing. I started learning more about the the tobacco cards, and I actually misspoke. I said this is an old tobacco card because it looks like one, but it's a caramel card. It's one of the E series. And learning about I mean, you can go so deep into the whole taxonomy of all these different cards. And when I came across it in this image on mine, the E101 is 3 times as scarce as Nate's card. But the same image appears in, I think, is it in the E102? I think it's maybe in the E106. Did you come across some other ones, Nate, that had it?
E92, yeah, was the other one I saw, yeah.
E92, yeah, and I think that one's more valuable. So across the different issues, maybe you get closer. I think, Cobb versus Mathewson, probably in the hobby, I'll take Cobb. And then, a lot of people frown on reprints in the hobby. But I think, there's a lot of, modern reprint refractors people like. And, in 1915, for people that liked reprints, you've got your Cracker Jack set. So, no, there's no shame. There's no shame in that, Nate, for me. I know a lot of people look down on the reprints, but I think it's pretty cool.
You're lucky Matthew's not on this episode. I think that's a hot button for him, calling the 15.
I know. I know. I just said it in case he's out there listening.
Nice. And Jonah says, now these are some honest corners. That is definitely true. I like it.
I might, but by the way, I'm joking about 1915, but I think I would even be wrong by calling it a reprint because his 14 card was different.
Correct. And that's one of the things that makes this card particularly noteworthy in the Cracker Jacks. So Cobb is agreed more heavily collected pound for pound than Matty. Whether that should be the case, I would dispute as a big Matty collector, of course. Both first fivers, Cobb's legacy obviously is better, as a player, but as an overall contributor to the game, Mathewson, I feel like is pretty underrated. But, part of that is like the pitcher versus hitter discount, I think, as well, is at play here. But, you look at kind of you go by a case at the National this year when we're walking together and we're with a couple guys and we see these 2 cards. I think everyone's going to kind of know what mine is, and people be like, is that Cobb, and which set is that? And that looks cool, but I'm not really sure exactly what that is. So from a pure like recognition and iconic status sort of standpoint, I think you got to go with the Cracker Jacks. And then the thing that I love about the Matty and that I feel like really makes it still kind of underrated is it's one of only 2 cards that there's no argument it's a reprint from 1914. Because, it's a different card and a new pose. So, he had the great horizontal card in the 14s, in action card, and then he has this portrait from 1915 to go with it. The only other player that had a different pose in 1915 was the great Darrell Del Pratt. Not exactly a household name. We see him in some of these old sets, but not a heavily. So there's one significant guy from the Cracker Jacks that has 2 different poses, and it's Matty. And, and I think it also happens to be a really aesthetically pleasing card, a really nice portrait. The Cobb is a nice card. As a color lover, I think that orange yellow background is incredible. The kind of, more simplistic sort of artistry on that one is kind of appealing too. I could go either way a little bit on that. It's definitely a very cool card. But this one is one I could never acknowledge defeat on. I will end some of our battles, but the combination of Matty and Cracker Jacks for me is kind of 2 of my favorite things in the hobby. So
yeah, this is an uphill battle for me. Gosh, the last one's going to be too. And Nate's Cracker Jack card here that we're all staring at is pretty darn well centered as well. And mine's pretty off centered. I think it gives it character. But one thing I love about this hobby, how everybody has kind of different quirks and what they're into. And we talk about the Goudy Ruths a lot. And one reason I love the 181, the green Goudy Ruth, is because it has this really defined line work. And it's just a style of art that I love. And when we look at the art on these 2 cards, the Mathewson is this, it kind of looks pastel. It's totally soft. You won't find a line anywhere on his face. It just looks like a like in old movies, how they used soft filters on close-ups of the stars. That's how Christy Mathewson is depicted here. And you look over at Ty Cobb, and it's got this really defined line work that I just love. And so that, to me, when I look at the art, the one on the right is the one I dig. But the one on the left, I will concede that it's a lot more iconic because it's Cracker Jack. And it's also worth noting that the 14 Christy Mathewson Cracker Jack is Nate's #1 all-time GOAT of the hobby Grail card. So
Yeah,
Cracker Jack and Christy Mathewson does have a special place in the hobby.
Yep. Absolutely, man. This one will have to do for now and maybe forever, but hopefully one day I can add the 14 to go with it. You dominated me on the Musials, but it looks like I'm getting the dub in the chat on this one.
Yeah, I thought you would. All right, we're 5 minutes under the hour, and we have the last matchup coming, and these are the big dogs. And the market at REA tonight has definitively spoken that yours is a hot card in the market. Maybe I don't know what. I think the PSA 4 that sold tonight went for 86,000. So maybe yours and your Jackie Robinson Leaf rookie, which is what we're looking at here, and PSA 3.5, call it an $80,000 card now. That's I don't know what your book value on that is. We have matched it against my PSA 3 Gowdy Ruth. This is the iconic batting pose. This is the kind of zoomed out. Ruth is swinging his bat and his follow through. It's in a PSA 3. Maybe one of those went interstellar tonight at REA. Also, I hadn't seen. But I would say these are easily two of the 10 most iconic sports cards to ever live. I don't know what the other 8 are. We can debate it all, but I'm just saying, I will declare that these 2 cards we're staring at here are 2 of the top 10, probably all time. What does it mean to be a sports card?
Yeah. Well, that auction tonight, I think that one was probably an outlier. So I don't know if I'm going to book myself all the way up too high on it, but, yeah, no. And it's, to argue against yours is incredibly challenging here because it's probably a top 5 favorite card of mine in the hobby. The Jackie Leaf happens to be probably on most days, or at least more days than any other card, my favorite card in the hobby. So I can make a slight argument in favor of it. But yeah, I think, you talk about wanting to collect absolute all-time GOATs that you feel like are going to stay hobby relevant for a really long time. And for me, at least, these are the 2 guys that are the starting point for that. I love your example of the Babe. On most days, the swinging Babe, I think, is my favorite. I like the red a lot as well, from the Gowdy set. We looked at the pop on these. Actually, we had looked at a different Babe on the pop. These are probably actually really close. The Jackie total pop is about 2,900 in PSA and SGC. We looked at the green Babe, and that was about 2,200. But the swinging, which they say was a double print, but the pop is nowhere near double the other one. No. It's a little higher, but I think it's actually probably around 2,900 as well, if I had to guess.
I looked at, I got 2,730 is what I have on my spreadsheet.
You? Okay.
So
yeah,
but rounding error. These are basically the same pop.
Yeah, right. So man, I don't know. One's a rookie card and one isn't. So to argue for mine, I'll say it's considered by the vast majority of the hobby to be Jackie's primary rookie. Jonah might argue with us on that. I think he and I were talking recently, and he likes the Bond Bread portrait from 47 as the rookie. But in this matchup, I'll go with the rookie status of the Jackie and the fact that there are 4 Gowdies, which tend to kind of split the vote among Babe collectors, or, at least Babe colorized card collectors in terms of, which is the favorite, whereas there's kind of like one main primary Jackie. What do you think?
Good argument on the rookie. By the way, Nate has a gorgeous example of the card I'm showing here. I have a halfway decent example of the one he has here too. So the point being, we're fans of the other card.
Jonathan, I can't wait my turn to correct you on that. Come on, your example is incredible, man. Are you kidding? The centering
Well, it's a PSA. Yeah, it's a PSA 1.
What's that?
It's a PSA 1 versus yours is, a much higher grade example.
Wait,
but thank you.
A PSA 1, isn't it? Wait, it's a 3, right?
So I was talking about my example of Jackie Robinson's rookie.
Oh, I see. Oh, yeah. My bad. I thought you were talking about your Babe. Okay, yeah. No, I was going to say your Babe is incredible.
Yeah, these two cards here, I think presenting and condition are pretty similar. And if you look at the pop higher, I guess there's about 500 higher grades of mine, about 700 higher of yours. So because the Jackie rookie is a little bit more recent, there's a little bit more of a high pop that survived. I would say if I'm rating I would take my card in a few aspects, but I'll concede rookie for yours. The most people consider Babe Ruth to be the greatest baseball player to ever live. Now, with apologies to the Ohtani crowd, but if you just look across, like Babe Ruth was just this iconic, larger than life name. There's probably never been a mythology around an athlete greater, and we've talked about this on prior episodes. But even the fact that he played during an era where a lot of folks just listened to him on the radio, it was like there's just this mythology around him and this aura. He's Babe Ruth. I think if you look at so you've got the athlete kind of against each other. If you look at the era, I think there's something about it being this pre-war card from a simpler time. It's got the big league chewing gum. I think there's something about this card. When I first got it, this is the only example I've ever had. I had an experience that was unlike any other sports card I've ever owned. Even the 52 Mantle, the Wagner. There's something that feels so charming and old-fashioned and unattainable. Like this is just this artifact of a simpler world. And I can't kind of describe it. Jeremy Lee, a hobby buddy and content creator, he has a gorgeous PSA 1 of this card, and he kind of talked about it similarly. But I think as much as Jackie Robinson was such an important figure, the card doesn't quite have this kind of the same charming feel that this Babe Ruth does. And then I think just overall the artwork on it and the colors, it's just the image it's kind of a better card to look at than the Jackie, which for me, the Jackie Robinson image, it was a slow grower. Now I've come to love it. But I think, in terms of the era, the optics, and the fact that it's Babe Ruth, those are my arguments for my card.
Okay, so it doesn't have the same charm. I'm sorry. All it did was integrate the hobby and integrate baseball, and then moving on a little, help integrate our whole society. So, kind of insignificant compared to the charm of the Babe, right?
I wouldn't use charm for any of the weight. Your card, the Jackie Robinson card, has much more weight in
right.
What he carried and the significance in the era. But I think when we think about Babe Ruth, we just imagine kind of this simpler world back then. It was, this is a card that came out right in the heart of the Great Depression. It was just a different time.
I agree, man. It is so charming. It is, and I don't know. I think Matthew has said this before too, but when you like picture a baseball card, your Ruth is like, it's hard to not picture that, right? Like what a quintessential baseball card. I mean, just beautiful, just perfect pose, perfect player. Aesthetically, I got to go with your card for sure. But the importance element, and for folks that like to collect with something, that has kind of a deeper meaning element that goes along with it, I think the Jackie is really, really tough to beat. It's, the first colorized set post World War II, post-war set. So super significant set, like the 33 Gaudi set, generally regarded as the set that, from a hobby standpoint, kind of, integrated sports essentially. So the importance of the set and of the card, I think, well, aesthetics are tremendously important for me. Sometimes some things have to trump that. And for me, the Jackie just can't be beat because its importance is kind of off the scales compared to any of the other cards, at least, that I collect.
There were more charitable comments towards the Ruth than I expected in the chat here, but I think the consensus and certainly the market value would say that right now Jackie gets the win. I'm looking at the 6 matchups, and Nate, I think you had a pretty good showing tonight. I think maybe I got the win on the Jordan refractor versus Kobe. Maybe, I'm not sure, and maybe we agreed the Musial went towards the sky blue, but I think you might have taken the other 4. So I'm gonna have to kind of regroup and really come prepared for the next one of these.
Well, I think you might have gotten me last time, so we might have to have one more that makes it decisive. But I will also take this opportunity to announce that I did win my card tonight at REA that I was.
Let's go!
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah. So it's not a massive card, but it's one that I've wanted for quite a while. I have not had ever an Eddie Plank card in my collection.
All right.
And I have known for at least a couple years which Eddie Plank card I would like to be the one to represent him in my collection. And I finally got one. So it's the E95 Philadelphia Caramel, the lemon lime Sprite Eddie Plank. So this one is in a SGC 1.5, and I think it looks really nice for a 1.5. There's a little bit of kind of, I don't know if it's paper loss or kind of schmutz on the back that I think largely accounts for the grade. Certainly, again, incredibly honest corners, but really nice color, nice centering, and a very solid front overall. It's the old SGC holder, so I'll have the decision. Oh, nice. You pulled it, man. Look at you going.
That is a beautiful looking card. Congratulations. I just threw it up on the screen. I love the color on that.
Nice.
And wow, way to go get it.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thanks,
that's a big win.
All right. Yeah, I appreciate it. So maybe a card to appear in a future episode of our battles here.
Would love to see it. Well, let's call it here. We were chatting again with our co-host Matthew, and we've gotten a lot of nice comments from folks. I think folks you saw at Strongsville about some of the Rough Cuts episodes we've done in the past, particularly top 10 cards of the golden age of baseball. And we talked about maybe doing one of those with pre-war, and I think we might lure Matthew back on with that. So we'll see if we can regroup here sometime soon and do another top 10.
Agreed, man. Yeah, that sounds really good. Fun battle tonight, fun REA auction, and looking forward to seeing what you got on eBay at some point soon. And thank you very much to the folks in the chat who helped make this a lot of fun tonight, as always. Really appreciate you guys participating with us. That's huge. And David Chase just came in. No, I just realized this was live. Nice. What's up, David? Well, you got the last minute. This is one of our shorter episodes, Jonathan. Usually we talk about going for an hour and we end up going for 90 minutes, but we actually stayed kind of reasonable tonight.
Yeah, we're getting a little better. Well, you'll have to catch it when it's up on Apple or Spotify or here on YouTube where we archive it. Thanks so much, everybody, and we'll catch you again soon. I'll see you, Nate.
Take care. All right. Bye-bye.